Good morning, boys and girls. Welcome back. We're so glad you're here. Last week, we got to celebrate 90 years as a church, and that was a pretty neat celebration. Peter even popped up in the pictures, if you didn't see that. Yeah, that's going to take you a long time to count to 90, Peter. We could let you keep counting. Just kidding. All right, so last week, though, boys and girls, we left off with a cliffhanger. We read 2 Samuel 18, verse number 5. It says, "And the king commanded Joab and Abishai and Ittai, saying, 'Deal gently for my sake with the young man, even with Absalom.' And all the people heard when the king gave all the captains charge concerning Absalom." So King David at this time, if you can remember, he and his son Absalom were at war. Absalom was chasing him. And so David, he tells his men, he says, "Don't hurt Absalom. Whatever you do, don't hurt Absalom." And we said, as our cliffhanger, well, would they obey David? Would they treat Absalom gently? So that's where we pick off. They are at pick up. That is left off and pick up. That is where they are. They're going out to battle. They're going to go fight Absalom and his men. In verse number 6, it tells us that they're going to battle in the woods or in the whole area of Ephraim, but a large portion of it was wooded. 20,000 men actually died. Verse 7 says, "Where the people of Israel were slain before the servants of David, and there was there a great slaughter that day of 20,000 men." All of this because Absalom, David's son, rebelled against David. And now 20,000 men have died just in this one day of battle. The Bible tells us that more people actually fled in their attempt to get away. More died in the woods than did in the actual battle that were killed. Verse number 9 says, "And Absalom met the servants of David, and Absalom rode upon a mule, and the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak, and his head caught a hold of the oak. And he was taken up between the heaven and the earth, and the mule that was under him went away." All right, use your imagination, boys and girls. All right, we've got Solomon. He's riding along on his mule, riding along. Are you using your imagination, Peter? No. Oh, because I said Solomon, didn't I? Oh, good thing Peter's here. Sorry, guys. Not Solomon. My bad. Absalom. Thanks, Peter. Absalom's riding along on his mule. Riding along. He ducks under a tree. Oh, wait. He didn't quite duck. Because did you hear what happened? His hair gets stuck in the tree, and the mule runs away. Okay, so we've got Absalom. He's there. Yeah, my long hair used to be longer. Absalom's hanging there. His hair is caught up in the tree. He's just dangling, and the mule has run away. Boys and girls, 1, that sounds very painful, and 2, that had to have been a pretty helpless feeling. Like, can you imagine him hanging there? Stop, I'm stuck in a tree. Okay, it's kind of comical if you don't know the end of the story at this point to think of a man just hanging from a tree by his hair. So Absalom is there, he's hanging by his hair, and a man sees him. A man's like, "Oh, there's Absalom." And he runs and he tells Joab. He goes to Joab, he's like, "I've seen Absalom, he's in the woods, he's in the tree, he's hanging there." And Joab's basically like, "Well, what'd you do about it?" In verse 11, it says, "And Joab said unto the man that told him, And behold, thou sawest him, and why didst thou not smite him there to the ground? And I would have given thee 10 shekels of silver and a girdle." He's like, "Why didn't you kill him? You saw him there. He was hanging there. Why didn't you kill him?" Well, boys and girls, why didn't he kill him? That's right. He obeyed. David had given a command and he obeyed. He's like, no, I'm not going to do that. Verse number 12, "And the man said unto Joab, Though I should receive 1,000 shekels of silver in mine hand, yet would I not put forth mine hand against the king's son. For in our hearing the king charged thee and Abishai and Ittai, saying, Beware that none touch the young man Absalom. Verse 13, Otherwise I should have wrought falsehood against mine own life. For there is no matter hid from the king, and thou thyself wouldest have set thyself against. He's like, I heard King David. I heard what David said. I wouldn't go against him because surely the king would hear and the king would find out. And I'm not going to disobey the king. I'm not going to do anything against the king. Boys and girls, as I was reading this, it reminded me of Numbers chapter 32, verse 23. It says, but if ye will not do so, behold, ye have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. Okay, now we're not necessarily studying this passage and this story right now, but you've probably heard that part of the verse quoted to you before, that last part. Be sure your sin will find you out. Well, this man, he's not actually named. He just says a man. He knew his sin would find him out. He knew that biblical principle. And he's like, I am not going to hurt the king's son because the king said not to. So Joab in verse 14, then said Joab, I may not tarry thus with thee. And he took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom, while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak. Boys and girls, did Joab obey? No, Joab didn't obey. Joab did not deal gently with Absalom. Joab went and he while Absalom was hanging there in the tree, he takes those 3 darts and he puts them right in the heart of him. Verse number 14 is what we just read. Verse 15, and 10 young men that bare Joab's armor compassed about and smote Absalom and slew him. So he puts the 3 darts in, and then the other 10 men who are with him essentially finish him off. They kill him. They did not deal gently as David had asked them to do. Well, Joab blows a trumpet, and that trumpet was a sign to the people. Basically, you can retreat. The war's over. This is the end. So they retreat, they go back, and the men there who had killed Absalom cast his body into a pit and covered it in stones. Verses 19 to 33, just kind of summarizing that up, there is a messenger who wants to go back and tell David the news. But this guy was only supposed to bring good news back to David. There were 2 messengers, one who was supposed to bring good news, one who was supposed to bring bad news. The one who wanted to bring good news, he's like, let me go tell King David. And Joab's like, no, you can't. You can't go give the message to David. Because, boys and girls, would David think it was good news or bad news that his son had died? Hey, I think it's bad news. So you can't send the messenger who's supposed to send the good news. So he sends Cushai, the one who's supposed to deliver the message. But the other messenger just keeps pestering Joab. I want to go. I want to go. I want to go. Finally, Joab's like, fine, whatever, go. I don't know what you're going to tell the king because we don't have good news to give him. Go ahead and go. Well, this guy actually runs faster than the guy who's taking the other message. He runs faster, passes him, makes it to King David first. And King David's like, what's the message? And he gives him a message. He's like, well, but what about Absalom? And that messenger didn't have anything to tell him about Absalom. And then they see that the other messenger's coming, and David kind of gets the idea that it's not going to be good news. And so he asks Cushai, and Cushai tells him that the enemy of the Lord is dead, basically, is the summary of it. So David mourns the loss of his son. Boys and girls, as we looked at this story, Absalom dying in the tree like he did, the 20,000 men who died, what we see, boys and girls, is sin brings consequences. Sin, and it hurts more people than just yourself. Those 20,000 people who died and then their families that were affected, our sin brings consequences. Absalom didn't lead a life that pleased the Lord, and his life ended in destruction. In James chapter 1, verse 15, it says that sin leads to destruction. Sin leads to death. In chapter 1, verse 15, it says, then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. Boys and girls, the ultimate punishment for our sin is death, eternal separation from God. But do you remember how we just talked with the Easter holiday? That Jesus dying on the cross conquered death. He conquered sin. And he can do that in your life too. If you've never asked Jesus to save you, today would be a great day to do so. We'll see you next week, boys.